Yeah, what's up, everybody? What's good? What's happening? What's cracking? Um, all right, we are now here. This is the January 8th, 2022 episode of the Boston Source Radio Show. That's right. I am just still recovering. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's me. Still recovering from the weekend. Tank Davis, Hector Luis Garcia, Washington D.C. I mean, that was just a crazy weekend. A lot of activities went down, over the course of the weekend. But here we're just breaking down the fight. It's going to be an extensive uh, review, or at least as extensive as possible. You know what I'm saying? As we got a lot to kind of like go over, you know, in this particular episode when it comes to the fight itself, the undercard fights, what was talked about after the fights, not just with what happened in the ring, but also what happened outside the ring. So we're definitely going to get a little bit more information in reference to that. So we are definitely going to break down, like I said, Tank Davis against Hector Luis Garcia, Boots Ennis versus Kieran Chikadze, and the Rashidi Ellis Royman Via fight, boy, and Demetrius Andrade versus Damon Nicholson. We're going to try to break down all of that as much as possible, and this is what I kind of gathered from most of the activity yesterday. Tank Davis, I've said it many times over, is looking like he is a superstar in the sport of boxing. And it pretty much showed with the sold out crowd at Capital One Arena last night. I mean, every seat in the house pretty much was packed, and you had like a number of people even standing out there. So if we talk about, the building was at capacity for this bout that happened between Tate Davis and Hector Luis Garcia, man. And you saw in that fight two guys that were really good fighters, but one is like a great fighter in Tank Davis. And, through the weekend, I mean, that was the thing that, the coaches were talking about, was that, Tank Davis and Hector Luis Garcia are two highly skilled fighters, and that it was pretty much all going to show in this particular bout. And within those first few rounds, you saw hints of that coming in from, uh, you know, Hector Luis Garcia, right? As he showed that he pretty much fights in the pocket, so to speak. Like I said, it has like this type of style where he has like a close in style, moving forward, pretty efficient with a number of the punches that he throws, and that is pretty much like how he break down his opponents. But once Tank Davis got you know used to the style of Hector Luis Garcia, that's when you saw the abilities of Tank Davis shine. Not only from a offensive standpoint, but also from a defensive standpoint. As you've seen him roll with a lot of the punches that Hector Luis Garcia threw, you also, seen him block a number of punches and dodge them in order to set up counters later on in the fight. So you had it where, I mean, Tank Davis just eventually took over in the bout, and that you seen once that started to happen, it was more of you know Tank just being the guy that was expected to eventually stop Hector Luis Garcia, and it got over to the beginning of the ninth round, as Garcia didn't come out for the ninth round, as he was getting beat down over the last couple of rounds, especially in the eighth, as a number of those punches that were just with a real conviction, and that Hector Luis Garcia was, really, um, really in a bad way, after the seventh and eighth round. You know, that was kind of one of the things that I've seen there is that, Garcia just could not take the power there from Tank Davis, and that, you eventually had him kind of like welts under the pressure given by Tank Davis. And that, like I said, Tank Davis, once uh, he just figured out the timing. Um, he just figured out the timing of Hector Luis Garcia and just eventually broke him down. And you just saw an eventual beating there from Tank Davis. It just was, not a good look, at all for Hector Luis Garcia. And one of the things that I kind of said before the fight took place, you with me, highly favoring Tank Davis to, win, was that if it was going to get a little bit too serious for Hector Luis Garcia, was it going to be to a point where he eventually doesn't come out? Because I mean, he's still a world champion at 130 pounds, so you want to not have too much damage, so that you'll be able to properly recover for your next fight, because your next fight is going to be a defense of that title there at 130, the super featherweight title. Remember, his bout before fighting Tank Davis was a win over Roger Gutierrez in order to win that world title at 130. So he's gonna be coming right back, trying to defend that belt. And I mean, depending on who could be playing as an opponent for Hector Garcia, I mean, he's gonna have to, be able to turn right back around after this loss and defend that title. So um, after those first couple of rounds that where you seen it was overwhelmingly in Tank's favor, then it's like, do you come out for the ninth round if you're not necessarily you know feeling all too good as far as like what happened in those past couple of rounds? You seen that his eye was swelling up and things like that. So it's like, am I sure that I want to go back out there against someone that was, had all the momentum, had, every, pretty much like every fan in the arena at Capital One, saying that, hey, we want to see, him getting knocked out. And, you almost, like I said, you almost seen that happen. You almost seen that happen. But Hector Luis Garcia, pretty much told his corner, I'm not going to, go out there for the ninth round. And it was almost like a no mas situation there in this instance for Tank Davis to score the TKO victory there. Of course, staying undefeated. That is, the 26 win by way of knockout, 28 wins, 26 wins by way of knockout, and he defends the WBA lightweight title. So I mean, that's going to be um, yet another event done there for Tank Davis. Like I said, sold out crowd. And we all know what's next. It's going to be Ryan Garcia. They have it slated for April. Looking at what the date is going to be as far as like what will be the best thing, whether it be at the beginning of April or probably the next couple weeks afterwards. That would mean that you have Tank Davis right back in camp against Ryan Garcia, and I'm telling you that what Ryan Garcia was saying as far as like him not fighting Marcelo Gesta, that was going to be scheduled for January 21st or even like January 28th or something. I mean, that I think was not a good look because you're going to come in there a good few months after your last fight. While Tank Davis has had his camp against Hector Luis Garcia, had his fight, and now he's going to be right back in camp. It's not going to be long before he's right back in camp. He's going to, rest for about a couple of weeks, and then he's going to go right back in camp. So you're going to have a Tank Davis that is now having these strings of fights, like I said, from last May, now here in January, and then coming right back in April. I mean, that's not, for me, that's not going to be looking good there for Ryan Garcia. So, I mean, more power to Ryan. He says that he's going to be, primed and ready for Tank Davis come April. So, that remains to be seen. But, on the flip side, Tank Davis said, it's like, look, I'm feeling good. I had this fight, took this fight against Hector Luis Garcia, did what I did. And he is like, Ryan Garcia better be ready. So I feel like that's going to be a big event, when that takes place. Most likely in Vegas. Some people say that it might be in New York or Madison Square Garden or something like that. I'm like, nah, it's got to be a Vegas bout. This is, an event of that magnitude where you could have it in Las Vegas. I see it at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Most likely at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, that it could, be out there, and that it's going to produce a huge gate there. I mean, like I said, Capital One Arena was sold out, and those tickets were crazy, crazy high, you know, for this bout that happened last night. And we saw that, hey, we saw the Barclays Center last year, that was a $5 million gate. That was $5 million gate. And this one here is highly likely to be a $5 million gate plus. You know, so you got that. So I'm saying, hey, why not have it in Vegas? It's gonna be selling out anyway. So I say, why not go ahead and reserve it for maybe like April 8th or April 15th. See what happens. I mean, we got, it's gonna be an instance of with April. There's 5 Saturdays in the month, so we're gonna see how that's gonna work out. I say maybe like April 8th or April 15th. You could have Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia take place in Las Vegas, and that's, like I said, it's going to be a big event there in Las Vegas, in that it could potentially be something that gets close to 1 million pay-per-view buys. You start the thing off as far as like promoting a fight ASAP. I say within the next couple of weeks, go ahead and promote it, and say, hey, yo, we got a big event going down. Let's go. Let's get it on. Let's start this, press tour. When that goes down. So we'll see how that go. We'll see how that happens. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like with Tank Davis here, like I said, riding this wave, he's gonna have a big 2023. He was able to get this stoppage here against Hector Luis Garcia. And now he's going up against Ryan Garcia here in April. He gets a win in April, then man, he could get right back in the ring maybe by what I say about September, October. No later than November of this year. So he could have 3 fights in 2023. I mean, I don't see how he can't do that. He's, one of the higher grossing fighters here in the sport. So why not go ahead and um, have as many fights as possible? We talked about his pay per view status. That a lot of the fights there have generated about from 15 million to $18 million in pay per view revenue, and we'll see what happens here as far as like those numbers for uh, this bout that took place last night. But you could see like already, people are talking about Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, and with the reach that they have, outside of the sport of boxing, that people are talking about. People that don't really follow boxing talk about Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. And the thing about it is the casual, as they call it, the casual fans that kind of like separate fight from being, a pretty, good event to being, crazy as far as like pay per view numbers and uh, folks that want to see the fight. And we haven't like had that in a while in the sport of boxing, you know. So, this you could have this, and I've said this a while ago. This has the potential with Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. Have the potential to have the amount of buzz from um, from an entertainment standpoint, a marketing standpoint, as years ago with Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather. You know, you have that potential capability to get huge numbers for pay per view, even in this particular era of of streaming and everything like that. And like what was it? Mr. Terrence Crawford says, "Man, I got a fire stick too." Well, we'll see about that. We'll see, how many people got them fire sticks, and how many of them will, probably use whatever they use for this. I don't think that's quite going to be that much of an issue in this particular case with Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. That's going to be something that either they're going to be there at the fight, or they're going to have a whole bunch of fight parties. And in this instance, with the fight parties, they're going to make sure that everybody's going to be there tuning in, or see if they'll have them in the theaters, like you have a lot of the big bouts that are shown on pay-per-view. You're going to do all that and be all out for that, and get this right, like how we had Showtime All Access for Tank Davis, Hector Luis Garcia. Imagine the interest in the All Access for Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. That's going to be like I said. I mean, I don't see why that particular bout and event won't be successful, very successful when it takes place. As I said, it's scheduled for April, so we'll see uh, how that goes as far as like what else is going to be out there as far as like when it's going to be actually scheduled. Because the sooner that is scheduled and locked down, the your more time and energy that they'll be able to have in order to market that particular fight. So I think that's going to be something there once that does take place. So definitely can't wait for that to go down. And maybe we'll touch on this particular event a little bit later. But I wanted to continue on with the card review. I was there. Doing photography. Have most of the pictures, some of the pictures loading up on the Instagram page and on the Facebook page for y'all to check out. So y'all could check out the Boxing Source. You know what I'm saying? On Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, also. So I mean, that's something that we definitely have going down. So yeah, let me get down to what else is happening there. I'll put this down. You know what I'm saying? Um, co-feature bout. Number of people are looking forward to this co-feature bout with Jerron Bootsinis and Karen Chukadzian. And that was for the interim IBF welterweight title. And yes, a lot of people, of course, were there in attendance at Capital One Arena to see Tank Davis, but I also wanted to see Jerron Boots Ennis. Of course, he's from Philadelphia, just about a 2 hour or so drive from Washington D.C. and a number of fans for Jerron Ennis came out there for this particular bout. I had good amount of people that I know from that area that took the trip down to D.C. In order to see Jerron Boots Ennis in action. For him to you know s- um, I'd say as many people kind of expected, before this bout, for him to get a easy knockout or stoppage victory over Karen Chikadze, you know. But the fight went down, and yeah, Chikadze wasn't very engaging for the majority of that bout, but there was a couple of things there that some people seen in boot sentence that they're like, let's slow down a little bit. As far as like, hey, is he the one? Is he the next one? Let's slow down a little bit. But before I break down a little bit more, we got someone jumping in on the live. That's right. They're checking in from the Atlanta area. The boxing academic is in the building. What's going on, boxing academic?
Hey, what's going on? How was the in crowd brawl yesterday? I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
I mean,
Was
I
that was
wasn't,
that
I
you out there
wasn't,
fighting?
I wasn't down there at the floor, man. So I didn't get all the way into it, but I will be hitting a little bit about that, and hopefully later this week, I'm gonna get a lot more about that. So we'll see how that works out, But yeah, man, crazy scene in Capital One Arena, man, crazy. But hey, I don't know, man. I might have to say a couple things about the event and stuff later on. Probably won't be included in this live podcast, but I'll definitely tell you some things about the scene. But yeah, um, crazy. Like I said, Tank Davis got that stoppage win, and let's talk about Boots versus Shukadze, and a lot of people, including myself, said, "Hey, man, this is going to be easy night, a short night. Boots Simmons is going to get in there and do his thing real quick and take out Karen Shukadze." But hey, it went through the full 12 rounds, and yeah. Lucinus did get a, unanimous decision victory, clean sweep. But there were a few things that I saw, there during the fight that I was like, there's a few things that he has to work on. And even though they did kind of like point that out after the fight in the post fight presser, I was like, ooh, I gotta slow down as far as like what he may be able to do here in the welterweight division. There's, like I said, a couple of things to work on in a couple of senses. But what did you think about that Boots Tsukazi and little event there that went the full 12 rounds?
Well, I think that with any fighter, the more data points we get on the fighter, the more the less invincible a fighter looks. Now, I'm only saying that to say if you only got 3 data points, you don't know what the shape of that curve is. You don't know what the true measure of that man really is. The more styles, the more resistance, the more adversity we see the who that man truly is. And so, granted, as you said, Boots won that fight easily. In the grand scheme of things. He won every round. So there's no question about him being who he has been touted to be. The only question is, A, is he a mature enough fighter? That's something that's a talking point from that fight. Is he mature enough to win grueling fights with people who hit him back? Is he mature enough to fight a style that is a pestering style, like a Arislandi Lara style? Is he mature enough to fight an Arislandi Lara style where they pretty much evade the whole fight and you gotta cut off the ring and pretty much, obviously he was gonna win that fight. That there was no question about that. But now the question is, for me, is that a style that would bode well against him? Is that the way that you beat him? If you can throw punches back at him, is the way that you beat Boots, circle around the ring, circle around the ring, circle around the ring, walk him into a shot, and keep doing that until he gets frustrated and he start taking chances? Because when I mentioned maturity, you could tell, like, I get it. Boots, he been knocking people out in 6 rounds, so I understand it. He only fought, 15, however many fights he fought. It's understandable. This is the maturity of a fighter. No
Mm-hmm.
one's taking anything away from him for that. But before we crown him and send him off into deep waters, he needs to get those things handled. He need to get that itch to worry about whatever we say in the crowd, or put his hands and knock somebody down and beat his chest to glory. He need to get that out his head and be able to go through them monotonous, boring, get this person out of here rounds. Because I tell you what, Errol Spence can do that. Errol Spence will keep working at I'm not comparing them, but I'm just saying
Right.
Errol Spence is mature enough to where he'll keep working his jab, he'll keep working the body, he'll keep doing that until he gets you, until he gets close to you, until he breaks you down. Boots is that guy, but Boots need to mature in that sense. Um, Another point to that style, the moving style and walking him into shots. I love Keith Thurman. Me and you used to live in Tampa at one point.
Yeah.
I'm a big supporter of Keith Thurman.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Keith Thurman will win the fight against him. But let me say this. After watching that fight, seeing the little Keith Thurman shuffle to the side, shuffle, 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 shuffle to the side, Keith Thurman ain't probably as refined, because that dude, like, he wasn't trying to fight. He wasn't trying to bring the fight, but he was refined enough to not get knocked out. Everybody can't do that against Boots. Everybody can't not get knocked out. Everybody can't put on a prevent defense. So, it was boring in that respect. But Keith Thurman is more clunky. That's all I'm saying. He's more clunky. He got his feet are not as good as probably that dude was yesterday. But
Mm.
Keith Thurman definitely know how to circle around the ring and is smart enough to, like, shuffle, 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 boom, walk you into a shot. Now, if Keith Thurman did fight Boots and he got that game plan, when he walked Boots into shots, Boots would feel it a lot more than when that dude hit him really clean, because that dude hit him clean quite a few times. And what
Yeah.
I was hoping, that it didn't turn into that Rashidi Ellis fight, because Ellis was winning, but I saw that happening because that dude was strong. But this ain't the same fight. But I'm just saying, I was hoping that didn't happen to him
Mhm.
by how clean he was getting hit.
Right.
Boots is the
Exactly.
real deal. But before we crown him, he got stuff to work on. I want him to be successful. He need to work on that other stuff.
Right. For sure. For sure. We got another guest in here. Thankful for him to join in the live chat. Tip Bayless is in the building, man. What's going on there, Tip?
Yo, what's going on?
Oh man, all good, man, all good to be here. At least they got like a little bit of rest, to kind of like recover from the weekend, man. It was just a wild weekend, man. Culminated in that fight, last night. So just dropping down the reviews and whatnot. But right now, talking about that Boots Shukazian fight, man. Yeah, Yeah, I was riding the Boots wave. Of course, I'm like, a lot of people have been co-signing Boots like he's, the guy that's supposed to be next to take over there in the welterweight division. But in this particular fight, I guess it was the matchup or something. But Shikazian was just, able to move around a little bit to where it kind of like got Boots frustrated at some points in the fight. What did you think about it?
It was an eye test fight. That's what it was. A lot of his opponents have been guys that stood right in front of him. Lipin Yes was a guy that stood right in front of him, and what's the last guy he just fought that he knocked out?
Crucio Clayton.
Yeah, Castillo Clayton. He was another guy that stood in front of him. A guy like Spence might stand in front of you. He'll cut an angle, but he's going to stand in front of you. Terrence Crawford, he's going to. Crawford could be a guy that'll stand in front of you. He'll cut an angle,
Yeah.
similar to Spence, but he's more mobile. Same thing with, like I said yesterday, with Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is a guy he's gonna move, and he's gonna like academic said, he's gonna pick a shot. He's gonna lure you into a shot. So all this was an eye test to really see like if Jaron Ennis has the whole package that everybody claims. He's got to work on cutting off the ropes.
Yeah.
Because that dude, I was watching the fight. I'm like, he's slipping a lot of these punches, but he's just not giving anything back. And if he has a guy that's going to give something back and is able to be as slick as that guy, or just like as slick, you know what I'm saying? He's gonna have problems, especially like if you get caught. Because there was some good punches that the guy landed, but he just didn't have any power behind it.
Right.
It was a couple left hooks I looked at. I'm like, okay, that could be a problem. And Keith Thurman is a guy who has a good left hook.
Yep. And he has some, he has that experience to like see like, hey, I see this in him, I see that in him, so I'm going to and be able to exploit that as much as possible. And like you said there, Tip, I mean, I was watching that during the fight. I'm like, yo, Willis is getting tagged by this left hook a little bit way too much. And given what he was talking about before the fight in the fight conference call, folks were kind of like bringing up the thing with his defense, and he's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about in reference to my defense? That well, you're getting caught with some shots, and maybe the stats. People could look at the punch stats and say, okay, he didn't get hit by that many jabs or total power punches. Like he didn't get hit by it, but you see that those openings are there for opponents to exploit. And that was the thing that I think that a number of people were kind of like saying in reference to boosting. It's like when you talk about the complete package there by Academic, like what that was pretty much the part that they were saying, like, okay, this right here is the one that we kind of like saying, like, I'm not sure if you're pretty much there yet from that standpoint. And this could have been that opportunity for him to like show all of that. And he didn't necessarily do that. It was, like you were saying, it was looking to try to get that knockout early and trying too hard to do that against a guy that you seen was looking to see what was happening or coming from Boots and was able to get away from a lot of those shots. And that, you kind of like telegraphed a lot of the punches that you were throwing there against Shukadzian. And you can't necessarily do that against a guy that, from a from an eye standpoint initially, that you should have been able to break those guys down. Like you said, Tip, a lot of these guys that Bruce has been facing have been guys that are, right in front of him. In a way, Chikazian was, but he still had the movements to kind of like throw off the timing of Bruce Ennis. And, he just didn't adjust to that during the fight. And, he talked about, his coach, his dad, Boozy Ennis, telling them what to do as far as like adjusting and everything like that, but he just didn't necessarily do it. And I think, being in that atmosphere, having a big crowd, having a number of fans from, Philly coming in there to watch him, to see him there, I think that kind of affected him a little bit. I know he also said that maybe, him having one fight in 2022 kind of like affected it as far as like, ring rust and trying to, get comfortable or having fun in the ring, but hey, sometimes that happens here in the sport of boxing. You got instances where you could not fight for 12 to 16 months. You still got to be, as fresh as possible in order to, stay on point as far as like who you're fighting is, who your opponent is, what your opponent does, and what you can do in order to counter what your opponent usually does out there in the ring. And I was like, well, we'll see what happens next here for Boots Ennis because I'm not sure. We might have another guy that will stand right in front of him. You know what I mean? But that could be a little different situation there. I know that Tip was talking about, maybe having another guy with that type of style, and I think we may have that for his next fight. Boxing Academic, you got something there?
Yeah. I think this was good for Boots. I think that the only way, the one way Boots don't turn out like them smaller fighters where they crown them and they make them the next best thing since sliced bread and put them on the pound for pound list and they end up getting, you know, beat badly is that he faces this stuff and then he goes and corrects it. He, gets whatever he needs to get from the team or whoever he needs to bring in and he correct it. Cut off that ring. Don't have them lapses in the defense where you getting caught by them shots and like be in positions to where you can get your offense off because he had times where he was like he you could tell he was real frustrated. He was just throwing like 20 shots and some of them got in, but he just wasn't hitting the guy. Like the guy was evasive. He wasn't slippery. He just was evasive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a good thing for him.
Yeah, it's a good experience for him. He was able to get those 12 rounds. First time that he went past 6 rounds in his professional career. So, I mean, that's a good learning experience for him. But like I said, I think that he will likely want to try to get back into it as far as like, hey, I need to refine my skills and see what I could do against, a lot of these other fighters.
I know they gonna bring that dude back for not journey people, but for like contenders who they think are like good people. They gonna bring him to like to measure where they at, and somebody will probably knock him out. But I'm just saying
I wouldn't
they'll.
mind seeing him again. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was all on him for as far as the fight like going the way it did, like being as crowd pleasing as it was. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes like when you got a guy like that, you can't go into brawl. You can't go into fight. Like you got to box. That's a guy you got
Yeah,
to box. You can't look to fight that guy. You got to box that guy.
yeah, and that would have been the element to like kind of like we were saying before to show how he is more of a complete fighter. That Boots could show his boxing skills and show like he could establish or pretty much do things with a good jab and start things off with that and just continue from that particular point and developing more things in order to break down Chikazian, but he wasn't able to do that over the course of those 12 rounds. So I mean that's one thing that we'll have to look out for in Jerron Ennis's next fight. Now moving on.
Can I say one last comment,
All right,
Jay?
what's the last comment?
Uh this comment is the reason why Errol Spence is the top welterweight. Errol Spence would have knocked him out. Errol Spence would have knocked him out. I ain't comparing. I'm just saying Boots ain't, Boots is ready in the sense to where his offense is ready, but everything else need to get ready too. Like the will, the discipline, the
Mhm.
intangibles that's gonna make him and keep him to be a champion. It's the difference between people may say Deontay Wilder is unskilled, but we all know Deontay Wilder's will to win is much greater than Anthony Joshua. I felt for Anthony Joshua and how he what you turn your eyes to the left for? To the right. You don't think Deontay Wilder will to win is greater than Anthony Joshua? James?
That's a pending discussion that we'll have at a later time.
Okay. I can tell based on how they fight and their mentality that Deontay Wilder grew up in poverty because he fights like he wants to never go back in poverty. You can tell a man who has had favor and how he fights. You can tell a man who slept in whatever is a level better than cotton, who slept in cotton briefs, something better than whatever better than cotton. I ain't trying to say silk, but you can tell Anthony Joshua slept in that grade level and higher than cotton briefs all his life versus Deontay Wilder was sleeping in them cotton tighty whities, and then he had to get into them briefs. You know what I'm saying? He fight like that. So all I'm saying is, yeah, man, you get what I'm saying.
Well, you could just compare like what Deontay Wilder was doing in his fight against Tyson Fury, at least in the third bout against Tyson Fury, in comparison to the rematch that Anthony Joshua had against Alexander Usyk, and pretty much like what the will to win was in those particular fights for Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, respectively. And that's pretty much like a comparison right there. Is that like even at the point of like round 10, round 9 to round 10 for Deontay Wilder, you pretty much seen that he still gave an effort that made it look like he still had a shot to win the fight. And while there was one particular point there for Anthony Joshua where it looked like he was really hurting Alexander Usyk, it didn't look like he continued that particular momentum in order to take over that particular fight in a rematch there against Alexander Usyk. Now, just moving into the next bout, Rashidi Ellis versus Royman Villa, right? And I'm like, man, this one here, I thought that, Rashidi Ellis, he was, coming into this bout, Showtime pay-per-view. Many probably didn't see him in his previous bout, that he had. That was, what was that, over in San Antonio last July against Jose Marufo. But that was just, one round, so he's only had one round in about 2 years or so. That previous fight they had against Alexis Rocha, where he got that win, that was like his last bout before having a run round KO victory over Jose Marufo, going up against Royman Villa, who, was there, that was 25-1 with 24 of those wins by way of knockout. Scored a big win over Jenilson Boca Chica in Atlantic City last September. Gave Boca Chica his first loss with a unanimous decision win, and it was not just a unanimous decision win. He almost won every single round in that particular bout. So you did have Rashidi Ellis there undefeated, and we all seen what was happening with Rashidi Ellis and Bruce Ennis. In the press conference, they were drawing back and forth like they could they could have faced each other, and Ellis was saying like, no, you're not going to do anything to me or anything like that, and they were just having a whole back and forth. But he should have had something in reference to what was here in front of him against Royman Villa, because those first few rounds you kind of like seeing, Ellis, he had the speed. He was showing that speed and everything like that, throwing combinations, going in and out and stuff like that. But for me, watching it live, I said round 4, I said, look at Royman Villa coming forward, and he's just continuing to come forward and back Rashidi Ellis up to the ropes. And when I saw that, I was like, that is a little bit of an issue for Rashidi Ellis, and that he's going to have to adjust there. But what Ellis was doing mainly to me was almost like either like a catch and shoot or wait and counter approach for Royman Villa. And Villa was like, you know what? I'm going to take these punches if I have to, coming from him. But if he's not getting out of the way, I'm going to make sure he pays. I'm going to throw every shot with, emphasis and things like that. So that's what he did. But not only was he doing that, in between, like I'd say around 7 and 8, you seen a little bit more skill coming from Royman Villa. He was moving his head around a little bit. He was, bouncing in and out. getting in and out of range for Rashidi Ellis throwing his punches. And while Ellis was, fighting off his back foot, which was a bad strategy in this particular instance when you have someone coming forward, then you just eventually seen them break down, Rashidi Ellis, and Ellis, having all that movement. By round 10, you started to see more of those punches landing there from Roman Villa. And then I was like, he scored that first knockdown. I was like, see, man, this ain't looking good for Rashidi at all. And then in the 12th round, you just said, yo, it looked like he was getting Rashidi was getting broken down. He was tired. He couldn't really, like I said, he couldn't really keep Villa off of him and still fighting off the back foot. So if you couldn't really do much off the back foot, like you're gonna have to figure out a way to come forward, smother him up, don't let him get off his punches and initiate the clinch, do something. And Rashidi wasn't doing that, and he got caught a couple times. One of those knockdowns, it wasn't quite counted, but another knockdown in the 12th round was counted, and that ended up being the difference in the fight. In the scorecards, you had one score that was tied there, 113, 113, and then two scores of 114, 112 in favor of Roman Villa, and giving Rashidi Ellis his first professional loss, man. And like I said, I mean that knockdown was basically the difference in the fight. And I know that a number of people felt like Rashidi Ellis won a majority of those rounds, but in that back half of the fight, I'm telling you, like Roman Villa was coming on and pause and getting into this fight, and you really didn't see any adjustment there from Rashidi Ellis to prevent Roman Villa from coming forward, cutting off the ring. Well, Ellis kind of helped him out with that. But still, once he did get Ellis to the ropes, he took full advantage of that. And so now you got, Roman Villa with another big win against another undefeated fighter. And hey, he might be in line to face Jerome Boots Ennis next. That's who I feel may be the next fighter that Boots Ennis goes up against at this particular point. I'm going to go see if Tip got something on that fight first, and then we'll go to Boxing Academic. Tip, what you think about that fight?
Yeah, similar to the same thing you said. I mean, he got off to I think he got off to too fast of a start. Roman, he didn't throw that many jabs. I think he only landed 15 jabs if I'm at the top of my size, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something around that. He wasn't jabbing like the first half of the fight, and he was only throwing power shots. So I'm like, when I go back and look at it, I'm like, yeah, Rashidi started off way too fast, and he should have just kept the jab out there. And then like towards the middle of the rounds, that's when he could have probably started to pick up his combination punching, and he would have been even more ahead going into the third half of the fight. But yeah, like he got tired, and like you said, like Roman, he was starting to really walk him down, and you could see it. And when he caught Rashidi with that shot, it changed everything. Like you could tell, like the whole dynamic of the fight changed, because like you could probably say Rashidi was up maybe 6-2, right? Once that knockdown happened, it's like, oh, whoa, not a fight. It's a close fight now. You know what I'm saying? Because like we know he's tired, and this guy's starting to pick up, so the pace is starting to change and everything. Like you said, Rashidi should have came forward. He did the same thing I felt Ennis was doing wrong. Like you stand there and you don't have your hand tucked to your chin and you're catching a hook. Rashidi backed up against the ropes and he pivoted off every time with his hand down towards his chest. And it was only a matter of time before this guy was going to catch him on the ropes. And that's exactly what he did. He was throwing the overhand right the whole time. Rashidi was catching that. When he caught him on the ropes the second time, it was a left hand. Rashidi was turning off. He caught him with a left hand. Rashidi went down. I was like, fuck. I was like, it's going to be close.
Yeah.
And when it got to the scorecards, I heard the 113, 113. I was like, okay, a draw is like, I was like, that's cool. And then they were like, the majority decision. I was like, oh, I was like, 114, 112. I was like, all right, Rashidi might have this by a round. No, I was in shock. I was like, that's crazy. Because
Yeah.
I didn't see Roman doing enough work in the first half of the fight to even make this a draw. Or I may not make it a draw to like win the fight.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I mean, he only landed what is it, like 6 jabs through, halfway through the fight, and pretty much like 7 jabs on the second half of the fight. So like he only had 13 jabs landed, according to punch stats. And a lot of the activity that he had was in the second half of the fight. He didn't really throw more than like 50 punches, but like one time before round 6. But every time after that, you kind of like seen that be his strategy was to try to be more active, come forward and be more active. And it was more about him, landing power shots that, Ellis was, able to give him. So that was my thing about it. And I'm about to like check the scorecards now, and it's like, yeah, let me see here. What do they have? The 113 card, that was, with a clean sweep from like round 1 through round
7,
7
right?
for Ellis in this in that 113, and then from rounds 8 through 12 it was all via. So
The other two scorecards are kind of crazy. You gotta see those. I think like they gave Roman like one of the early rounds, like in this. I think
they gave Via the 6th and the 7th round.
yeah. I don't think he won the 6th at all.
Yeah, and that was pretty much the thing right there, was them giving via the 6th and 7th round for them to have those 114, 112 scores in favor of Via, and him scoring those 2 knockdowns gave him that, that 114, 112 score on those. But yeah, giving them 2 points is pretty much the main difference. Was that him getting the round 6 and round 7? That's crazy. I mean, even though I felt like, Via started to be more, I guess, try to control the pace more by moving forward, I still felt like Ellis still had enough activity there for him to win those 2 rounds at the very least. But yeah, that was crazy how they kind of like scored it. Boston Academic, what were your thoughts about that fight that happened there, where Via ended up getting that win?
I I knew it was a competitive fight, but I thought I didn't score the fight, but I thought that based upon the early work that Ellis did, that he did enough to squeak out a win with getting knocked down twice in the 12th round.
Yep.
One thing I will say is that this is an example again of someone ramping up in their level of competition, because his win betrayed him. And the wrong time for your win to betray you is when you got a guy that goes 12 rounds and gets his action on the other end of round 6. He started getting hot.
Mm-hmm.
He lukewarm all fight and he get hot past round 6. That's the worst time for your win to betray you. Maybe they thought that since he would be in Rashidi's face, that Rashidi could get him out of there based upon what level of work he had done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't. He didn't get him out in the earlier rounds. He was landing some shots. Some shots were not like landing, but I mean, he definitely won the early rounds, and then it's like his motor wouldn't go toward the end, and it was just a flat fight from him.
Yeah.
Whereas the other guy was just, he was still going. He was still going, and you could see that them shots that he was throwing, like he said, like Tip said, off the ropes, it was just like, that was close. That was close. And then finally, when that shot landed, I don't know what that earlier round was. You're right. The tenor of the fight changed. You was like, man, I hope this guy keeps doing what he needs to do. But the rounds were still competitive, but it did change. And then once he got caught, it was like, man. But I guess the refs liked his style, like the aggressive style, and they didn't like the other style, especially once he got tired. It's just something for him to work on, to know that he got the A, work on his win. B, jab. Like fighters are 1,000% better if they jab. He would be a much better fighter if he jab. Stop relying on all the hooks and everything that you did to beat these bums. And like the only way not the only way, the one way that you can guarantee a win against a better fighter is by jabbing. People need to go back and watch the two Ward versus Kovalev fights. And that tells you the story you need to hear in regards to how you beat your opponent that gives you trouble. First fight, Ward was like tentative in his jabbing and stuff. He tried to jab with Kovalev. Kovalev caught him like on a counter type thing. Whatever, it was a jab actually, right? It was a jab, but that he caught him with.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then from there, Ward had to get close in on his body and then throw body shots and give him a present as he left out. And then Ward squeaked out that win. And then if you come and see him in that next fight, it was like textbook. Jab, jab, jab. Get on the inside. Don't allow him to, do whatever with his reach. And then once you're on the inside, dig to the body. And it was beautiful, man. That second fight was beautiful. Ward knees was a little bit better too. You could tell his knees wasn't hurting that fight. So yeah, the young fighters need to learn from that. Jab and throw body shots.
Yeah, jab, throw body shots, and make sure you score. Score something before you either try to, move back or move side to side. I didn't really see that much side to side movement there from Rashidi Ellis. And you talk about the thing with Rashidi Ellis. It kind of like reminded me of Mr. Tony Harrison in his bouts against Jermell Charlo, and the two like contrasting styles there, and then that second bout where kind of like his win kind of betrayed him a little bit. Got another person on here for the live discussion here. The host of Chicken Talk on Twitter Spaces is Lazy Lefty in the building here. Yo, what's going on, Lefty?
What's good? What's good?
Oh, chilling, man, chilling. Got in here for the Rashidi Ellis Royman Villa talk, man, and Rashidi, from our standpoint, you would have thought that he would have done some things against Villa, but Villa was there for the long haul. I just looked up his resume and stuff like that. He's been in a couple 10 rounders or 12 rounders himself, before going in this bout. So. He's been in some, long bouts, so he was ready to go to full 12 if need to be.
Yeah, that was our upset pick of the night. It was Villa over Rashidi.
Yeah, that was the one that like people said, hey, this one was going to be the upset of the night. I know a number of people thought it was going to be Damon Nicholson over Demetrius Andre, but like it was. The thing with Villa versus Rashidi Ellis. And, like I was saying, I mean, it's one thing when you have the speed and things like that, but you got to have something that'll, make your opponent respect you. Or if you can't, then you got to be able to move around the ring good enough to where you could score, get out of the pocket, or get out of your opponent's line of vision so that once you, use your offense, you could get out of his line of vision and have him reset before he tries to come back at you or, pursues you once again. And, Rashidi just, like I said, I felt like Rashidi just allowed Royman Villa to be able to get to him by backing up to the rope.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, yeah, that ended up being his downfall, man. And I don't know what's going to be next for Rashidi in this point. I know, like, we had this conversation earlier on Twitter Spaces. Some people think that maybe this should be a rematch there against Villa, but I'm like, nah, let Roman Villa go ahead and face, someone like Boots Ennis if Ennis isn't fighting for the full IBF welterweight title next. Why not have that? Because this was it's supposed to be for the number 2 position in the IBF rankings, and and the IBF really hasn't announced that Ennis isn't mandatory yet. And I know that there's been some things out saying like it may be 120 days after Spence has his next defense or whatever it is, if he has his next fight coming up. But we'll see how that goes. But man, I would like to see what Villa does next in his next bout, even if it's against Jerome Bruce Ennis, because I mean, Ennis still has a few things that he got to work on, and Villa is one of those guys that's a come forward fighter, but he's someone that has power in both hands. That's the thing about it. If you have something like that with one fighter there with, like I said, now he has 26 wins and 24 of those wins by way of knockout, going up against Bruce Ennis, who's now, 30-0 with 27 knockouts. Hey, that could be a very good matchup there or whatnot, I had like a live chat shout out to C Will, man. He thought that it should have been a draw, with the, giving off the punch stats and things like that. I mean, like you said, one judge did have it as a draw, 113, there with the 2 knockdowns. So, pretty much was a 7-5 scorecard in favor of Rashidi Ellis, but with the 2 knockdowns that took down his score by 2 points. So yeah, that's how they did it. But yeah, the other 2 scorecards, yeah, I guess it was like some say it was all over the place, but you had the 2 scorecards that were 114, 112 in favor of Roman Villa. Those were pretty much identical scorecards. They had like the 6th and 7th round in favor of Villa, and yeah, I just didn't think that he got that in there in that particular bout. But that was the upset of the night. And then of course you had the first bout on the pay-per-view telecast. Demetrius Andrade coming in there looking like Kanye West or something against or Ye or whatever they call him now. Against Damon Nicholson. And, that one, I know that folks in the area were really excited about that particular bout, given that Damon Nicholson is from the area and that, he had a number of experience or lots of experience at 168. But, this is someone in Demetrius Andrade that's a very skilled fighter and, had, a fast start there in the first round against Damon Nicholson. And it was just like I think that the speed was just too overwhelming for Damon Nicholson. And yeah, I know that the camp there at Upton, they see if they were going to try to make some adjustments there for Damon Nicholson to get back in the fight. But Andre was just too much as far as like his overall skill level. He controlled the distance for the majority of the fight. He was a much faster fighter and way more accurate. It was just more about him, having the lapses like that he's used to having. Like Demetrius Andrade could be like one of the best skilled fighters in the sport. It's just that he has lapses at times where he'll be open or catch a few shots and end up being, either off balance or end up being knocked down. And there was one thing where he got hit with a body shot and that should have been scored a knockdown there for Damon Nicholson, but that wasn't the case. They had like one instance where he did have an issue with his shoulder, but still it was more of like Demetrius Andre just really showing out his overall skill level there over the course of those 12 rounds to score that unanimous decision victory there. But for me, having Demetrius Andre to 168, I like to see what he does next. I don't think it's going to be against the winner of Benavidez versus Plant or something like that. But maybe you'll have another fight there at 168. I was part of the Chicken Talk discussion earlier today, and someone mentioned Vladimir Shishkin, who defeated Jose Uzcategui in
That was me. That was me.
Yeah, that was Lefty that suggested that. So maybe Vladimir Shishkin would be a good opponent there for Demetrius Andre. Maybe I'll make a couple of phone calls, talk with Demetrius Salita and say, hey, what about a fight between Shishkin and Demetrius Andre? What would you feel about that, and see how that would kind of like shape up. But I want to see Demetrius Andre in a couple more fights at 168 before he faces someone like a David Benavidez or a Caleb Plant or even David Morrell Jr., someone who one of the more top fighters there at 168. Mix it up here. Let's go Lazy Lefty here first on that bout here before I revisit Tank versus Hector Garcia. Lefty, what you think about Andre's performance out there?
I mean, it was a typical Andre performance. Start hot, coast to the UD. To beat Andre, I mean, for a good Andre fight, you got to put he's a lot like a Lara or Regendow. If you don't put him in there with somebody to raise his level, he's just going to coast to a win. I mean, I wasn't disappointed in that because I'm so used to it.
Yeah. I mean that's what we've seen in a number of his previous fights. He'll have that fast start. He'll score a knockdown or something like that in the first couple rounds, and then after that you'll have a little bit of a hiccup here or there, and then end up getting a wide decision win. So that's that. Tip, what you see there while watching that fight?
Andre, he boxed good. I think he boxed good. There was a hiccup where he got knocked down. That's because like Rashidi, he kept dropping his hands. I don't know what it is with these guys who like to be like slick in the ring. Like they all had the same habit of just not keeping their hand up, and they get caught with a shot.
Yep.
But other than that, I mean, I think Boo Boo just has to be stronger and tighten up his guard.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I was realizing, like, when he was fighting Damon was catching him with some good shots because he wasn't as tight on his defense. Like, his guard's got to be tighter. And then he's just got to be stronger, too, because that weight difference, like he said, I know he said it himself, like, he felt it in there. Like, yeah, you got to be stronger in there to fight these guys at 168 because they're not naturally, like, around the same, like, weight you're walking around that's cutting down.
Yep. Some of them could be up to like 200, 200 or something before they get down to 168. So you get, you 200, get down to 168, you can rehydrate like 180, 185 or something, while going in there. So that's going to be, something that I guess Andre will have to get used to in this next couple of fights at 168. Boxing Academic, what you got on this one?
I'm going to refrain from speech because mine's probably gonna sound not positive, so I'm not gonna say
it. Oh man, come on, why not go ahead and
I'm just saying it was kind of boring.
Bias. He knows his bias, so he's not gonna.
I'm not biased. It was boring. It was like, and I respect him as a fighter, but it was boring. It was like I was doing other stuff, and I never really get into his fights because they kind of be. I respect his craft, and I agree with whoever said you gotta like get him in a position where he gotta fight and stuff. But I'm tired of him fighting guys that we know he can beat. That's no different than Terrence Crawford or everybody else. Like, all right, we know that you're good. Let's see you fight somebody who who we don't know that you can beat. I'm tired of people just coasting. Let's see some real fights. Like I get it, he ain't been in the ring in a while, but Terrence Crawford got me salty, man.
I feel you.
I
What
mean, you
what
can't.
what, what Terrence Crawford do to you?
He ain't fight Spence.
Oh yeah, I'm a little salty at that one too. So
That
He
man
ain't do
took.
he ain't do nothing to me. I respect him as a fighter. He's very talented, but
I'm mad he
fight
ain't fight
Spence.
Thurman. If he would have fought Thurman, he would have probably got the Spence fight. In all honesty,
I've moved
I
on from.
agree.
but
I
he turned
agree.
it down.
He
I've
would
moved
be
on from
okay
Mr.
not fighting
Crawford.
Spence if he fought Thurman. I would be okay. I would feel vindicated if he at least fought Thurman because that would be a level of fight greater than any other fight he has ever fought. Like Thurman, yes, is a shell of himself, but that's still a notch to where you can raise Terrence Crawford up a little bit and be like, well, I'm not sure, is Spence not number one now? Spence the number one guy. There's no question about that. But if Crawford beat Thurman, I would be like, okay, well, now we need to see them fight to know who is the number one guy. Like that's the case now, but I'm just saying, if he fought Thurman, he at least have more claim to
Well,
the
Yeah.
throne
these dudes, all these dudes at the welterweight division, that made everything interesting now because now Keith Thurman gets to warm up, and
against who?
the engine gets going again. So I hit my boy up. He's got a fighter. Um, he's got a fighter that trains with him at St. Pete's. They said they're still in camp and they got a fight day coming. I don't know when. My assumption, maybe February. Just my guess. Like Keith
Well,
will
it'll
get the
be a
fight.
little bit later in February because I know that February 4th was like a potential date for a fight, but yeah, I think that's out of the cards. So maybe it'll be something like maybe February 25th or something.
That's the exact date I was gonna say, February 25th.
Yeah. So,
Like
so
I'm hoping. I mean, if Keith get a fight on February, you know what I'm saying? Like that measuring stick gets even closer now. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, Keith only had one fight with, you know what I'm saying, during this comeback. You know what I'm saying? Another fight is just as good, especially if he gets a guy like a Cody Crowley.
yeah.
Another young guy, you know what I'm saying? Guy got some power, you know what I'm saying? Just get
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he only had that fight against Mario Barrios last February, so he had been, on the shelf since then. So I think that him getting another fight in before, maybe getting a big matchup would be good there for Keith Thurman there in the welterweight division. We got some in the live chat. Shout out to Petty Killmonger. GSP got robbed. He won rounds 1 through 10.
1 through
See,
10.
that's yeah. Hey, but some people said that Rashidi Ellis won up to 9 rounds, 9 to 10 rounds. But I guess the judges felt like Royman Villa won the last 5 rounds or something like that, and like I said, the two judges that gave Villa the 6th and 7th round, man, I'm like, man, I don't know about all that or something. That was wild. But back to the thing with Tank Davis and Hector Luis Garcia. Either I was talking with either Coach Bob Santos before the fight, or if you check out the Rise podcast, as Tip Bayless does, and that Lazy Lefty kind of like checks out once in a while, or often, fairly often. Coach Calvin Ford was like saying, "Hey, Hector Luis Garcia is a very skilled fighter. Like we can't play
He
around with him
is.
like him,
He is.
and you've seen that in those first few rounds. And the thing about it is the way that Hector fights. He's an efficient, technical type of fighter that pretty much like stays in the pocket, and moves forward, and kind of like bounces in and out when he does. But he's still there where he could see where he gets openings and takes advantage of those openings. And he
But
was doing that.
people ain't gonna say it because they don't want to give Tank no credit, man.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. But me, I gave Hector Luis Garcia the 2022 Bison Source Fighter of the Year for his wins over Chris Colbert and Roger Gutierrez, for him to be the WBA super featherweight champion. I think that he had, two impressive performances against those opponents in 2022. And that, you were going to see like the best out of Hector Luis Garcia as much as you could here against Gervonta Tank Davis. And yeah, there was a couple of times where he did catch Tank, with a few good shots. And,
he was disciplined to that body too, man. He was disciplined to that body.
Yeah. You heard the crowd gas a couple times with the big shots upstairs that Tank Davis took. But
all I know, it's a lot of people I done stopped listening to when it comes to boxing because they let their biases get in the way of what they actually saying there in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I had got to tell me today that Hector wasn't trying to win.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. You was on the space when he said that, wasn't you, JB?
I think I probably missed it at that point. Was it
Hector wasn't trying to win? I don't.
Like how was he not trying to win?
He was saying because he wasn't taking enough chances throwing the right hand. And
I think he took more chance than he should have. I mean, that's why he was getting clipped with the right hand because he was taking a little bit more chance. I mean, he was safe, but damn, I guess
this dude ain't never liked Tank, so
yeah, that's the thing about it. They never liked Tank, and that's what Coach Calvin Ford was saying in the the press conference, was that these guys ain't really giving Tank his full credit. That he isn't one of the best fighters out there, and of course
he impressed me last night. Impressed me
Bob,
I held Hector in high regard.
Yeah, and so there was that that level of skill that you see from both fighters, and I think that from a boxing fan standpoint, up to that part where it got to the 7th and 8th round, or 6th, 7th, and 8th round, where Tank just eventually technically broke down Hector Luis Garcia. But those first 5 or 6 rounds was a good tactical battle between those two guys, and from a boxing fan standpoint, that was very good. But from a standpoint of a majority of the people that were there at a Capital One Arena, they were thinking that Tank Davis was just going to flat out wash him in those first 2 rounds. And I said, nah, I think it was going to be, it would have took up until the 8th or 9th round for Tank Davis to, eventually stop Hector Luis Garcia. So I think most of the crowd was like, yo, let's see what we can see here. I mean, it took until 1 o'clock or something for the fight to start. And they're like, yo, I want to get in here, get out, hit the club,
Yo, I looked at the time. It was 2 o'clock. I was like, damn.
Yeah, 2 o'clock. I was like, that fight ended. I'm looking at the thing before the post-fight presser. It was 2 o'clock, man. So yeah, it was wild. Let me see here. We got somebody I'm about to bring in here. Hold up. It looks like what he got, some something. I don't know, man. He get his growth.
What's up?
MMA prodigy. There.
How you doing?
Man, I'm hungry, man. Come on, man. Look, man. He can't. He gonna be eating, man. I ain't even eat yet, yo. What's going on, man? What you think about the fight?
I thought it was good. I see people, I've seen a few people talking down on Tank's performance, but he always has a slow start, and he always kind of gives away the first few rounds to figure his opponents out. And you saw in the 8th, it was heating up, and you saw Tank was starting to get to him in the 7th and the 8th. So that's pretty much every Tank fight. He's kind of giving away the first few rounds in a way just to figure him out. So he looked good, and he looked good.
I don't think that's a good thing. I think when people say the first few rounds, Tank is I think that's a part of the breakdown. The breakdown is the fight. The fight pace is moving so slow that Tank is able to give away the early rounds, right? But as you're doing that, it's not a lot of activity. So come, say the 4th round, it starts to pick up. And you're not as warm as you should be. Whereas like he's gonna warm up just by being a late starter. Like it happens all the time in tank fights, and I feel like in the Ryan fight, there's gonna be a problem. When they face each other, it's gonna be a real problem. Like
I'm taking
Tank can't start off late.
I'm taking Garcia to beat Tank. I think Garcia beats him. Take advantage of the slow start, and I mean Garcia is so much bigger frame wise. He's got that fast left hook. I'm taking Garcia in that one.
Yeah,
and that's not. I've seen a couple of people say that. I've seen a couple of people say
a couple people say that. I think it's more about like you said, the hand speed, and you got to see about what he's going to be able to do as far as like his reach. Like he's a tall guy, one, and he has that frame, like you said, MMA prodigy. He has that frame. I mean, for me, like that the way that he's built, he could be like a 140, 147 type guy.
For sure.
But and also had that speed. But it's more about for me in that particular bout, like is Ryan Garcia gonna be open to the mistakes like he's shown in a couple of fights that he's had, and if he does that against Tank Davis, he's gonna pay, and he's gonna pay big time. So we'll see how that goes there. Like I said, it's gonna be coming up in April, so I look forward to that. Tip that we're talking about it, the fight a little bit. You want to break it down a little bit more, and then we'll go to boxing academic.
We go to academic.
All right, gotcha. All right, boxing academic.
I'm gonna drop down too, JB. So I'm gonna just listen. I gotta do something.
All right, for sure, man.
Yeah, I too think that the strategy of, I mean, maybe this is what he said, but this was what my interpretation of. So when I was watching the fight, I was scoring the rounds, and I'm thinking to myself like, yeah, I know Tank gonna get to him, but these are some, these are competitive rounds, and depending on what you like as a judge,
and that's every Tank fight. Every Tank fight, he's losing the first few rounds. It was nothing new, and Garcia's good. I mean, he dominated Chris Colbert. That's a good fighter right there, and he had to take a few rounds to kind of figure him out, get the rhythm, get the timing down.
That's fair. Let me finish my point. Thank you. So I understand what you're saying, MMA prodigy, but what I'm saying is, while that is the case and it seems to be working, that shit ain't gonna fly forever. One thing, I mean, obviously Tank is a talented specimen. Tank has out of this world power. He the low division Deontay Wilder. He can separate you from your brain cells. But having fight, even when Deontay Wilder does that, it scares me for him, because there's gonna always be an encounter with a person to where you can't really do that. The only way the one way Deontay Wilder can beat Tyson Fury is if he stays competitive in the rounds, and then he, uses power to catch him with the big shots. He can't do the Luis Ortiz, lose all the rounds, and then hit him at the end. I'm saying this to relate it to Tank, to say that there's going to be a guy that Tank meets that he ain't going to be able to just, maybe he can, but maybe he won't be able to touch his chin. That ain't Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia gets hit. So Ryan Garcia, the interesting thing is that he will get hit, and it's just a matter of like how he responds and stuff. But there will be a guy that Tank may not be able to get to. Tank is a lot more skillful, like, if you compare his skill set to, let's say, a Deontay Wilder. But you get what I'm saying. The parallel of that scares me, because he need to work on using his jab more to set up the other stuff, as opposed to just walking in and throwing hooks and waiting till round 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 to get somebody out of there. That don't bode well for
have faced next. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes in that particular instance for Teofimo Lopez. But for Tank Davis, he has this bout against Ryan Garcia, and if he's able to get through that particular bout, I don't know, maybe he faces Devin Haney at the end of the year. That could be a potential big 2023 for Tank Davis if that ends up happening.
I like that fight. That's a guy he can't start off slow with either, because Devin's definitely impressive in the first half of that fight.
Also, breaking news a couple minutes ago. I should have said it when I came in. Rest in peace to the King Kong man, Luis Ortiz. Cardiac arrest. Rest in peace, Luis Ortiz. Dead at a 44, 42, something like that.
Wow.
Tragic. Real tragic, man. It's horrible.
Wow.
Blue Blood Sports. So it actually hasn't, and this is the crazy thing. It hasn't hit the big news stories, but Blue Blood Sports TV covered it. That's a legitimate source. Blue Blood is real. He's real close with Ortiz's family, and that's sad, man. But it has not fished like the huge outlets yet.
We'll have to see how things are developed there with that one. There for Luis King Kong Ortiz. I have to check the thing as far as like that goes down. I think he kind of like dropped off there. If I could, what was it? Maybe I could check his manager's Instagram or something like that to see if he have something else there for that. But if that is what there's the story coming out, man. That's real tough there. So, but some of us kind of like know reference to Blue Blood Sports. Maybe he has something there where he has that developing story there, but we'll see more information as that goes on. But that kind of like breaks down most of the stuff there from the card there of Tank Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia there, and we had like other fights on that card. Tip, like you was like out there at the fights and stuff like that, right? So what about the stuff that was off the pay-per-view card that you kind of like that you seen that you were impressed with, like depending on when you went up?
So the prelim fights?
Yeah.
Let's see, man. It's kind of hard to say because like none of them were really a 50-50. I mean, I guess the what's the guy who fought Lamont Peterson?
Oh, the guy that was 16-16 in that joint. He was Michael Lagundo.
Yeah, and that's probably the one big upset that caught me by surprise. I didn't expect him to win like that.
Real quick, the thing with the MMA Prodigy before he dropped some there before he dropped out, and in reference to the thing with Luis Ortiz. But he said, a certain person on there that he got the news from. And when he said the name, I was kind of, I was trying to keep it like a little bit cool and composed there in reference to that. But MMA says that he was joking in reference to that thing with Luis Ortiz. But I'll say one thing about King Kong though, he was MMA Prodigy was talking about his age. I mean, I don't know, man, but when he mentioned that name, as far as like who dropped that news, I was like, yeah.
So he said he was just playing when he said all that.
He was just playing.
That's unfortunate. That's
that is unfortunate. There,
I'm saying, it's not unfortunate that he not dead, but like, why would you do that? Like, that's not cool in the sense.
As far as like having that type of news or something, you know what I mean. So we'll see. But Tip, you were talking about the undercard joint. There wasn't really like that many 50-50 matchups. The thing there with Anthony, with Lamont Peterson and Gundo, man, I was really thrown off by that there, man. It was like almost like it almost reminded me of Peterson's fight with Lipinets, and how Lipinets was able to eventually break him down and ended up stopping him. And that's what we kind of like saw in this bout here in the third and then the fourth round. And this was like a 6 round scheduled bout for 6 rounds. And the thing with Ogundo was, if I'm not mistaken, he may have been a opponent that they kind of like found or something like that, because I wasn't too certain about them locking down the fight for Lamont Peterson until late. So
was the fight at 140? Was it a 140 fight?
now I don't think it was like quite like a 140 type fight or whatever it is. It was like I think it was a little bit above 140 pounds.
Yeah, he should be fighting at 140. I don't think he should be fighting anywhere near 147 or a catch weight by 147.
Yeah, because I think the thing about it was that most how they do most of the fights that are on the undercard, or not necessarily like an eliminator bout. They could like originally schedule it for like a certain weight, but they could have the weight plus one, as they usually say, for fights in certain divisions. So yeah, with that one, I kind of like say that maybe they just had this thing here, north of 140 pounds there for that. So yeah, and it just it looked like it was at a point where you had Ogundo just not being affected by what Lamont Peterson was doing, and then he just just said, "I'll just walk forward and start throwing punches, and whatever I land, I'm gonna land big punches on him." So yeah, this thing was like just a shade above 140 pounds when they weighed in. So yeah, like Peterson was like a little bit above 141, and Ogundo was just right above 140. So
yeah, because are him and Anthony the same height? Like, what's the size discrepancy between them? Because I walked past Anthony, and I was bigger than Ant. I was surprised, and I'm only 139, but like I could tell my frame, I'm bigger than him. It was kind of weird.
Like Lamont is like 5'9", and Gundo, I thought like Gundo was, shoot, he was a little bit shorter. He's like there around like 5'7", 5'6".
Yeah, I'm surprised these dudes are fighting at the weight classes they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Brandon Lee as well. Oh, go ahead.
Is it just Lamont's punch resistance was gone as it was gone like in the last 2-3 fights he done fought, or so it's just that it's just time for him to like stop boxing, right?
Yeah.
At this point, yeah.
Okay, but we already knew that though.
Yeah.
I saw
that was the first bout he had in like a few years, but he tried to fill out the card with as many fighters within the DC area as possible, Washington DC, Maryland, Virginia, whatnot. Try to fill out the card, and so they wanted to have both Anthony and Lamont Peterson on this card, and Anthony had been scratched last minute, or pretty much like the day before, whatever it was. And here with Lamont Peterson, I guess they had just found the opponent there, Michael Ogundo, and I guess he just didn't, like I said, didn't have the punch resistance there against Ogundo. So that's pretty much like how that went.
I respected they went to they put the people in the area on the card. I do respect that.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess people do that anyway, but I respect it.
Yeah, with them filling out the card, it ended up being around like 12 bouts or so, for this card. And you had, like I said, you had Lamont Peterson, you had Mia Ellis there from the Upton camp.
She looked like a beast.
Yeah.
Oh, she is a dog. Like the way she was setting up combinations, and she finished the girl with the right. Oh man.
That was awesome. Most definitely, you had that. And you had, Jalil Hackett. Jalil Hackett in his fight, he was looking real good. And I was, glad to see that, because, he hadn't been in the ring in a good while. And he was just really doing a number there, on his opponent. So I thought that was a very, very good performance there with that, first round stoppage victory that he had there against Joel Guevara. And maybe they're trying to get him right back in the ring pretty soon. Maybe see if they have like a youth title there for him. He'll either there at 154 or 147 if he gets back down to 147. So we'll see. How that turns out too. Keyshawn Williams would look pretty good there in his bout. It did go to full 6 though against Gustavo Vittori. You had Trayvon Marshall with a first round knockout victory. Brandon Lee was able to get a TKO victory over Diego Luque there too. So you had a few good things. Vito Milnicki had a good performance against Omar Rosales too. So yeah, there was a real packed card on there. You know what I'm saying? Android said that Jaleel Hackett has a great liver shot there for being like he is so young. Yeah, he was able to set up that shot real nice there. They're just 19 years old. So definitely looking forward to him back in the ring, hopefully real soon. I want him to be as active as possible there in 2023, so definitely looking forward to him having more action here at this particular point. So there's that. One thing I guess, before I, roll out of this live portion here, of course, during the Tank Davis, Hector Luis Garcia fight, you had the thing there. I think it was around like round 6, round 7, where Tank and Hector Luis Garcia had a pause because of a little skirmish or altercation going down ringside.
I was 5 rows behind that fight.
Oh, 5 rows.
That altercation. Yeah, I was right behind it.
Yeah,
it was weird because everybody around the stadium, they were like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like they went into like an oh moment. And I was like, what the fuck happened? I ain't see nothing happen like in the fight.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, everybody around me standing up, and I see like Meek Mill, Steven Jackson jumping over chairs and everything. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And the thing about it is, it's like I think he had like Meek and Steven Jackson and whatnot, and I think it was like a back and forth with John with the Russell clan and whatnot, and I'm like, man, well, one thing is it's like one, you got the Russells there, and a lot of us know about what Gary Russell Jr. has been like talking about over the past year and a half or so, 2 years and whatnot. But there's going to be a point where some people are going to take real offense to it. Like you could be a fan or you could criticize fighters, but some people will take offense to it, and that's pretty much I think what kind of like happened at that point. But I'm gonna try to get a little bit more on that because this week, I'm planning on getting out there to talk with Mr. Gary Russell Jr. And you better believe that I'm going to be talking about that particular topic right there. He'll have, his posts on Instagram and stuff like that where he's going to be talking about it. But yeah, I'm going to definitely get at him about that and, see what he says and more because I'm definitely planning to, get in contact with him to talk about that plus more that's going to be happening there in, his professional career. So, we're definitely looking forward to seeing what's happening there at that point. And hey, I don't know what's going to happen here over the next week or so in reference to that, but I think that's going to be a little bit of a talking point for the next few days or so. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yes. So yeah, I'm kind of like I don't really like hit the social media or pop culture thing all too heavy like that, but I think there might be a few posts here and there about that particular altercation that's been floating around here for a little bit. So maybe I'll get more information on that here in the next few days and see how that goes down. But for the time being, that's all I got here for this particular podcast, man. Thanks for everybody that joined in live, that they were able to get in live and have their take on what's happening and what's going down. And this will definitely be available on a podcast portion through iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, or iTunes and Apple Podcasts. So you be sure to check that out.
Before you go, I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll have any more major sporting events like boxing at the Capital One Arena ever again after last night?
Ooh, no.
What was wrong with it?
No.
Oh, man,
okay. All right, I'll say this, right? After everything was done, after the fight, the event was done, after the post-fight press conference was done, a couple of the representatives from Showtime were, very, they were very impressed. They were, kind of like a little happy about a few things that, were, down as far as like what was happening there in the Capital One Arena. So they for their perspective, they were happy. Me, I'm like this. It was almost similar to how the Barclays Center was for Tank versus Rolly Romero. It was like that same type of atmosphere.
For real?
And it's one thing to like have events, but to have certain events, there's like some things that you just can't have in arenas or something of that capacity. So as far as like boxing events, I'm not sure if they'll have something like that again. I mean, they're gonna have the regular stuff like they could have like a
Hockey, basketball.
Like college basketball, tournament type games and that type of stuff in there. But as far as like boxing matches, nah, I don't. And I ain't sure if that's gonna happen. I'm not too confident in all that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's going to be one of the last big events there for a while in that particular capacity. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, on that note, that closes off this show. Thankful for everybody that tuned in live. And like I said, at the end of every show, folks, the point of boxing is a hit, not a hit, not the same in trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.
All right, bud.